Hello, one and all, and welcome to another exciting, hair-raising, fun-filled, expeditious episode of Radio-Rama, where I show you how to work on radios, televisions, anything that happens to glow when it comes to tube-powered electronics. And today we have a 1935 General Electric model A-64. This is the innards, of course. This is the front. Kind of has a love it or hate it type of design going on. The finish is original and it's in remarkably good shape. This is the kind of finish I prefer versus having something that has to be refinished. And even if it's not perfect, so what? The radio's 90 years old. It can afford to look a little bit less than perfect. Anyway, this is kind of an unusual set. U.S. manufacturers of radios did not really tend to do a lot of exporting to other countries. Well, at least they didn't so out of the Americas. But this is appears to be an export model because it'll run on anywhere from 110 to 240 volts. So that indicates this could have possibly been a set that could have been made for the European market. I know Zenith definitely did some export models. I think they did some business in the EU. Well, it wasn't called the Euro Union back then, but Europe, Australia, and so forth. So this is one of those sets, and it's AC only, which is kind of unusual because a lot of the sets back then were AC or DC. Anyhow, it's got this roll chart type display here. Either it's shortwave or standard broadcast. I do not know its working condition, and I'm not going to try to fire it up. When you get into sets from the 30s, if it's got the original electrolytics in it, chances are 99.9% certain that they're going to be hosed. And I'd rather not do something like possibly fry the transformer without at least taking the chassis out and see what I'm dealing with first. Welcome to day 2 of working on the GE radio. And we actually got a little rain last night. And I know that some of you people, it's not a big deal. But it is getting on towards the end of March. And it hasn't rained here since December. Before that, it barely rained at all before then. So we're having one of the worst, driest winters on record. I'm also having kind of a difficult time. That's a cat carrier that used to belong to my eldest cat, and I think when you're with an animal for 2 decades, they become part of your life. So today I'm going to work on some radios to try to keep my mind off of things. And right, General Electric. It's time to take the guts out of here and see what's going on inside, whether it's been worked on or whether it's all original, or a little bit in between, whatever that means. So, it looks like the knobs are held on with little set screws. So I'll need to take those off. Looks like there's some of the felts left, which usually the felts don't survive because the first time it gets taken out of the cabinet, the felts get lost. So, anyhow, time to see what's going on under the hood. Alright, so here it is out of the cabinet. And let's take a look underneath here. And it has been worked on, actually. It appears that, from what I can gather here, the electrolytics have been replaced at one point. These are 50s, looks like 50s era electrolytics. We've also got a 50s or 60s era bumblebee cap. And it's been recapped such a long time ago that the replacement caps themselves are going to shit. You see how we've got this bulging coming out of the positive end? That essentially means that the layers that are in the foil have failed, and same with this one that's bulging. It's ruptured. Powering this up would have been a mistake. I could have done a lot of damage to the transformer here. So this is going to require a complete total recap job. I wouldn't trust anything in here. Sprague 600 line. I don't know what that means. 600 volts maybe. Sometimes I like to save some of these old caps because of the graphic design on them. Sprague. Anyway, so what do we have here? We have a 40 microfarad rated at 425 volts and 8 microfarad cap. What do we have over here? Probably another 8 microfarads. What do we got on this one here? Probably 16 microfarads. Then we've got this low voltage electrolytic. What is that going to? Looks like it's coming off of one of the IF tubes. It's probably like serving as a bias. It's only 25 volts. And we've got another little electrolytic over here. 8 microfarads, 150 volts. That's coming off the output. That's probably also a biased cap. And then how many paper caps we got total? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 paper caps. So again, we'll need to replace the electrolytics and the paper caps, and then we'll give it a test. Alright, so I've replaced all the critical capacitors. Here's the shitty old ones that are all swollen up and everything. It's interesting. Sprague Products, North Adams, Massachusetts. I used to live in Boston about 25 years ago. Pretty part of the country up there, especially in the fall, but good God, does it get cold. This guy is cracked open, so clearly it failed. You can see here where it spewed some of its innards. That little spot right there. So what I'm going to do now is put it back in the cabinet and bring it up slowly on a variac and see if we have any sort of radio action going on here. Okie dokie, so I've got this going through my isolation transformer down there, and I've got it turned on. Well, I'm going to turn it on, and we'll bring it up about 50% on the variac. You know, at first I thought this was one of those color changing dial things, but that's not the case. They made a bigger one of these that had a whole bunch of colored lights in it that would change colors whenever you changed bands. That's not this set. It just has a set of regular old pilot lamps here. Nothing seems to be happening. Let's bring it up a little more. All right. I think I would have heard something by now, but I don't hear anything. All right. Let me make sure my speaker's connected correctly. It appears to be. Let me. Yeah, I did not hear anything unless that's a volume over here. All right, let's try it again. Seems like it wants to work. tuning condenser ain't moving. It is completely frozen.
If you companion. But upon the second death, then the trust usually goes chunk, 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 chunk. Let's say you have 4 children.
Well, that works. The Quack Medicine show is coming in loud and clear. But we've got some dirty contacts here. The grease that's in these bearings here is probably all seized up. Excuse me, which is why we're not getting a good connection there. That's good. The radio has come alive. So what I'm going to do now is disconnect everything and replace the remainder of the capacitors. I need to clean up and lubricate and get all this business working again. I don't get what this is supposed to be. It's weird. It's like there's a planetary gear here. It's like a vernier tuning, however you say it. Well, all that needs to be cleaned up. It looks like actually that tuning condenser is actually moving. It's just not very well. Whatever. I'll shut up now. Disconnect everything. We're going to shotgun recap the rest of it. And again, I'm going to take this out there in the front yard and clean it up. And then we'll go from there. But it seems like it's coming alive, so that's good news. Alright, so we got the rest of the capacitors replaced. And it's interesting that this radio worked at all, because quite a few of the caps that had been replaced weren't soldered in very well and were coming loose. There was like 3 or 4 of them in there that were not really soldered on there very well. So what I'm going to do while I'm still under here is I'm going to clean the wafer switches back here. This is the band switch. Just put like some cleaner on it. And we'll work that back and forth. There. Kind of interesting mechanism here. Oh well. Anyway, I'm going to clean the volume pots, the tone control. I'm going to flip it upright, and we're going to clean the top. I'm going to take it out to the driveway to do that, so I don't fill my entire garage with 90-year-old dust. And then we will do a test. The other thing I'm going to do before I button this up is we need to install a safety fuse. Because who knows, at some point this transformer or something else in the set could decide to go cattywampus. And in order to prevent any real significant damage from happening, I put a fuse in front of that so that if something does happen, the fuse is going to pop well in advance. So you can catch a problem before it becomes an even bigger problem and causes more damage to the set. Alright, so I cleaned it up. I just took my leaf blower out here and blew all the dust off. And I was looking at this tuning mechanism, and it's pretty interesting what it is. So what it is, you'll notice that when I tune it this way, see there's a little cam in here. You see that little thing sticking up in the air. What happens is that you get about 2 or 3 turns out of it, and then it hits. I'm not sure if I'm filming this right, but you can see what it enables you to do is fast tuning, or you can back up and do some fine tuning. So see, watch. Fine tuning, coarse tuning. So for example, if you're on shortwave, you can really, fine tune that station in. It's kind of a neat little thing. I like weird stuff like that. I did oil and lubricate everything. So now it should be, it's working a lot better now. Seems like it's getting a little bit stuck right there. I think this slider needs to be lubricated up a little bit. I'm using this stuff called tri-floats for bicycles, but it sure works good on just about everything else. Alright, let's try that. Ah, much better. Yep. That's what it needed. It's just getting a little bit gummed up right there. Yep, perfect. I think this radio's had a tremendous amount of use. There's a lot of wear and some of the controls here. What I'm also going to do is, I don't like this crumbly wiring coming through for the grid caps on both of these tubes, so I'm going to replace that. As I said, I'm going to install the aforementioned fuse. And I'm also going to run a line in for audio so that someone could listen to radio and the music that they might want to port through. And since this is a set with a transformer, thus making it electrically isolated, we don't need to add a isolation transformer in the audio. You do not want to, you don't do this on a hot chassis set. Hot chassis set, you need to put an isolation transformer in. Not so in one of these sets that has a power transformer. Alright, so I replaced one of the wires over here. The other one, you have to take the transformer can off, or the cover off, and then we can get to the wire. Run it over to this grid cap, and what I do is all I do in these things, this is a lazy way of doing it, because these are crimped in there, is I'll simply just leave the cap on top of the tube, and I'll solder my wire on top of that, and that way I can do it all in one nice neat operation. You want to keep the wire as absolutely short as possible. The longer you make this, the more possibility of radio interference. Alright, so now it's time to install the audio input feature, and what we do here is I have a 3.5 millimeter stereo cable coming in, and that goes in through a little hole here that was already drilled, and I'll put a little glue in there to keep that from chafing. And what we do is we put our right and left channels together through a pair of, I think these are 90 something ohm resistors. It doesn't really matter, the resistance can be like 100, whatever. And then those two ends tied together. That's important. You don't want to just twist your right and left channels together. That's not good on the input device. The other side will be chassis ground, because that is the other side of the volume pot. We put the positive on the positive side, or the top of the volume pot, which is where our incoming radio signal comes in. And what will happen is that the impedance that this the audio input device will put out will be enough to actually cancel out the radio signal automatically when it's plugged in. And as soon as you unplug the device, of course, radio would be restored. So I'm going to do that, and then we're going to install the safety fuse. And then it'll be time to test, and hopefully it'll still work and not fail. There's nothing worse than spending all day working on something that worked and then it not work. So I'm trying not to jinx myself. Alright, so we have the audio feature installed. Now it's time, I've installed a fuse and a fuse holder. And I made sure not to accidentally drill through the label, because that'd kind of be shitty. But what we're going to do, and second of all, I didn't like the cord it was on here. It's probably, the cord's from the 50s probably, and it's all stiffened up. So I have a bunch of this reproduction cloth covered wiring, which looks more period appropriate. I even found a vintage plug so it'll look legit. So we'll feed this new cord in. One end will go to one end of the fuse, and the other, this will go then to either side of the power transformer here. So again, if anything goes nuts, well, that fuse will take the damage. And it's important to use a slow blow fuse. Don't use the rapid blow, because when you turn these guys on, there's usually a pretty big surge. Well, there's usually a pretty big draw of current as the tube filaments heat up, and then they settle on out. So you need to have something that has a little bit of wiggle room, because if you put a rapid blow fuse in there, it'll probably pop as soon as you turn it on. I use a 1.5 amp slow blow for most transformer sets, and that generally does the trick. Looks like whoever did this before used masking tape. Oh well, fine. I'll probably use a wire nut or something, but it won't be masking tape. Yeah, you can tell this was done a long ass time ago. This is the old cloth impregnated electrical tape. They quit making this stuff a long time ago. Alright, so we've got the safety fuse installed. One end goes to the power transformer, and then there's the other end of the line. And let me show you a little trick that I use when it comes to putting on new plugs. What I do is I just tin the very edges, and that way they don't come, frayed and undone when you're wrapping it around the screws on the terminals of the plug. So, I believe electrically we're just about done here. I'm going to do a test. Good God, I've been making a mess today. Jesus. I always start these projects with, boy, look how nice and tidy my bench is, and then I turn it into I don't know, it looks like a hurricane comes through by the time I'm done with one of these projects, but whatever. I have a theory that if you have a really clean bench, then you're probably not really working. Then again, that's probably some bullshit saying. Whatever. Houston, we have a problem. The problem is that the little insulators that keep the tuning condenser off the chassis are completely rotten. So that's shorting out my signal.
Even the best
So I need to replace those. It's also not very sensitive. I think I need to test my tubes here.
Because they will rebel against God.
So let's cut her off with to replace those rubber grommets and test the tube, see if we've got anything that's weak in there. Because I have a decent antenna on here. It should be more sensitive than that. Either that or maybe the IF cans are way out of whack. I don't know. We'll see. We ain't out of the woods yet, for sure. Well, clearly I'm a fucking idiot because I was like, well, first of all, I did stabilize this guy. It's not wiggling around anymore. I don't have that short because I put rubber bib washers. Every time I fix anything in the house that concerns plumbing, I'm always out of washer because I use them all the radios. But anyway, I'm an idiot because like that came loose. So of course it's not going to pick up anything. So I'll need to resolder that back in there properly. Then we'll resume with testing. That'll probably solve a lot of problems. Alright, now we're cooking with Crisco. This seems to be working pretty good now.
This week in Indianapolis, players maybe that stood out for the right or the wrong.
Line called Madam by Madam C.
Analysis, townhall.com. I may not know Dr. Pink. He is a nationally recognized authority on natural and alternative health. He's worked with top Hollywood celebrities, professional and Olympic athletes, and he continues to be involved in the latest research.
After it's batted once by Justin Gundelay, pulls it down and hands it off to Jaden Ivey. So Gundelay back in. He worked against Zach Eady earlier. Jaden Ivey down deep for Travion.
Oh boy, so we have a healthy radio now. And I'm having to yell over my incredibly loud washing machine over there, so I'm sorry about that. Now it's time to do the fun part, which is to clean up this cabinet, which has the nice original finish on it. Step outside and get away from the noisy washing machine. And so I'm going to use my two favorite products. It's going to be Howard's Restore Finish, Old English, and then I'll follow up with a paste wax. By the way, I've been cleaning out the house today, so if anyone wants an ugly chandelier or a toilet seat or an air purifier, it's sitting on the side of the road for free. Alright, so let's get to this case. Alright, so I'm going to use, again, my favorite two products. Howard's Restore Finish and Old English. And no, it's not the stuff that you go to the cheap quick stop store. It's not malt liquor. I don't know why I'm just ruining my driveway like that, but what this does, this goes in and kind of rejuvenates the finish a little bit after it's been all dried out. And speaking of finishes, I have a preference to try to maintain the original finish if possible, even if the finish isn't perfect. Because once you refinish a radio, that's just it. You're going to have a refinished radio with a non-original finish. And even if there's a little bit of nicks and stuff, it's fine. This thing's like 90-something years old. So, well, I probably got my math wrong. 1935, you do the math. It's old. So, we're going to go over the whole thing with Haird's, and then the Old English, and we'll let that soak in for a little bit. Then we'll follow up with some Caranuba paste wax. All right, so this has been saturated with both of those products, and yes, it looks wet. No, it will not stay looking like that for very long. There's a lot of people, especially antique dealers, you know, if they got something they just want to get rid of real quick and they just want to make it look pretty temporarily, they'll coat it in those two products and call it a day. But if you really want that shine to remain, then you need to seal it up. And so I use Carnauba car wax. I am going to let this kind of sit on the finish for a little while, maybe like 30 or 40 minutes, and let it soak in, and then I'll go add it with some car wax. And then I think we'll be well on our way to getting this reassembled and back on its merry way to enjoy another 80-something years of life. All right, now it's a wax time, and I've got my Carnauba car wax. I really like the traditional Meguiar's cleaner wax. It's just plant-based. Kind of smells like bananas, which is kind of nice. And what you want to do is just come in here, and I save all my shitty old socks that I've gotten ruined, which I do frequently because I do things like wear them outside without my shoes on, which absolutely makes my wife super thrilled about that. But anyway, this is kind of a long, drawn-out process. You just want to take your time. The first round will probably get your wax rag soaked in remnants of the Harrods and the Old English. That's why I usually bring two socks out. First one absorbs all the stuff from the Old English, and the second one is more for, pure waxing. Sometimes it takes like 4 or 5 passes. There's a lot of people that when they get these things and they refinish them, they make them in a satin finish, and in reality, piano-like glossy finishes were pretty popular. So in the end, what I want to do is make this as glossy as it can be to return it to its truest original form, how it would have looked like from the factory. It's kind of windy today. My socks are blowing down the street. I'm sure no one wants to see that. Anyhow, so nice warm day. It was supposed to rain, but it didn't, of course. So what? I guess that's an indicator that I should I'm sorry, wax the radios. Well, apparently it's time for the Frosty Freeze truck to come. You know, I don't understand what's going on. They used to have another ice cream truck that came here, and now they have this different one. Oh well. I don't buy any other ice cream anyway. It's probably too expensive. Anyway, here is the set. And it's starting up its little tinkly sound again. Anyway, here's the set all polished up again. This is closer to probably what it would have looked like when it came out of the factory. Meanwhile, what I also did is I polished up the knobs. So, I think we're ready to do a final reassembly. I'll be honest, the ice cream truck is kind of creepy. It's like it's prowling the neighborhood. Like I said, I think I would drive myself nuts if I had to listen to that crap all day long. Anyway, the radio's going back together quite nicely. And so all I need to do is tighten up the screws, put the knobs back on, and we'll do a final test. Alright, so she is done and back together again. Got my little Bluetooth running through it. Not a bad sounding set, really. Anyway, kind of had a lot of fun with this guy. I can't say I'm in love with the way it looks. It's definitely strange. It looks like some sort of insect. But it's done, and will hopefully go on for many more decades of being a happy radio. Anyway, guys, I realized that maybe my behavior's been a little odd during this video. I'm kind of getting over the death of my favorite cat, so I've been kind of in and out of being kind of depressed about it, and I did this to kind of keep my mind off things. So I'm sorry if I cursed a little bit more than average. All right, thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them down in the comment section below. and I'll try to get back to your comments and answer them if you have any questions. So until the next time that something comes across my workbench, which I guarantee is going to be this lovely General Electric with the Ingraham cabinet. See you guys next time. Adios.